in charge. Ain't trying to flex, I'm just here to set the bar. Don't take a rest, you look pressed, how bizarre. Thought you was pulling strings, if that ain't who you are. I'm in charge.
And we are. So if you didn't watch part one is I am talking today with Hanshi Deena Naidu, who is the nominated Australian of the Year for his contribution in spreading the art of karate. He's a keiatsu and master of meditation, and he's a faithful student of Goshin Yamaguchi. Hello, Hanshi. I'm picking up from the last question that we had, and you made me wait. Where is the proof of the existence of God to make it easier for us to have this sort of faith? Like, for example, as children, we believe, some of us believed in Santa Claus. And when we were told it wasn't real, because it was just a coping mechanism, if you will, for being a human being, we were all sad. And as I get older, I grew up, like I said in part one, I grew up Roman Catholic. I'm a spiritual person now, but I'm not sure if I would say I'm Roman Catholic. But even with that in mind, the downloaded feeling of God, of his existence is in my subconscious, right? So now at 45, I'm like, okay, if this is to be real, I want this to be a real meaningful relationship and not just this ritual or cultural thing that we need to believe in something or we're going to go to hell, right? So in my mind, I'm going, well, where's this proof? Because and I don't say that because, they what's the common phrase? Those who believe without seeing and so on, they know how amazing they are. And that's great. But wouldn't it be nice if there were just some physical proof of, and now that I know it's his existence, so that I could feel calmer? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, don't we all want that to a certain extent?
Okay, so let me tell you a story. This story is relating to one of my students, and her name is Tony Godsell. I like that name, Godsell, right? Selling God, right?
Perfect.
Tony Godsell. She's beautiful young lady. Her sister Alana lives in New Zealand, and Tony lives here in Australia. They're two beautiful people that were students of mine for a number of years, and they even did my keiatsu courses. Now, Tony, when she was young, she was associating with the wrong people. So her mom came to me, Teresa, and she said, Sensei, they called me Sensei at the time. She said, Sensei, Tony is misbehaving. Can you please talk to her? I said, yeah, no problem. Happy to talk to her. So I said, Tony, come outside. We'll have a chat. So I got one of the senior students to take over the classes, and I went outside, and Tony sat across from me, and we started chatting. And the talk was about developing character, associating with the right people, increasing your goodness in yourself. And it was very intense, like I'm doing here today, where I'm telling everybody that we must think good, be good, do good, and then live good, right? We must become better beings. So this was the conversation that we were having. And believe you me, Diana, it was intense. It was so intense that God appeared as a light above Tony's head, a huge light, just sparkling in gold and silver rays that expanded out of this ball. Yes,
see, or both of you could see.
Wait, hang on. It's above Tony's head. She can't see. She got no eyes on the top of her head.
True story.
Okay, so it's above her head like this, above her head, and I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it in awe. I hesitated to call Tony because I didn't want to miss it. I'm looking at this glowing light. And I can only imagine what Moses had gone through looking at the burning bush and the burning bush talking to him. Right? And I'm looking at this light and it's glowing. And I had to say it to Tony, Tony, look up. And as she looked up, this light just like at the speed of light, it moves so quickly into the universe. That's what happened. So God appeared as a light, acknowledging what I'm saying to Tony as the truth. And here's proof that I saw God. So God can appear as light, as a burning bush, as a person.
Does it come to a point?
As an animal, as anything.
Does it come to a point where you just have to either let go and believe or not believe?
Let go and let
so
God.
Many stories that, that are true, and you're like, There's always the and I'm not saying that for you, but in general, there have been random apparitions and people who see Jesus, people who see Buddha, people who see the Blessed Virgin, people who see ghosts, and you can't, we can only discount it to a certain extent, right? So I asked myself, is this how people cope with things? So, for example, when my dad died, I had a dream that he sat me down in a church right in front of the altar, and he started talking to me about how to interact with God. And it was this craziest thing, because my dad, in human form, my dad would never have done that. He would have been like, go to church and do confession and be a good girl, right? And I said, well, how do you talk to God? He says, it's much simpler than everyone thinks it is. Everyone thinks you need to go through this and go through that. You don't even need to open your mouth. You just need to open your heart and let go of resistance, right? And I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. And so we spoke in my dream, it felt close to 2 or 3 hours, right? And he looked wonderful. And so when I woke up, I had this sense of, like you said when you were looking at Tony, above Tony, this immense sense of peace, and happiness, overflowing happiness, right? And I was so happy for him because of what he gets to experience, And then all of a sudden, I shifted back into my body, if you will, in my lower thoughts, I guess. And I was like, oh, that's just a dream. That's just a coping mechanism. That's just a way.
So why do you remember it? Why do you remember it so well?
Because I've got a great imagination.
No, because it's a true experience. It's a spiritual experience. That's why I remember it so well. Why do I remember all my dreams so well, especially when it relates to God? Because it is a spiritual experience. It's not an ordinary dream.
Wow. Well, because sometimes I do have weird dreams, so I it's hard to kind of figure out what's what.
God can appear in your dreams too.
Well, I had a beer with Jesus once. That was a great dream. That was a fantastic one. Told me to get my stuff together and stop being silly and do a podcast with Hanshi.
Yeah, somebody asked me to be a Christian, and I said, they said, oh, why don't you join our church and become a Christian? I said, Jesus was my brother. They looked at me with their eyes like that and said, what? I said, Jesus was my brother. Prove me wrong. Jesus was my brother. I tell everybody that Jesus was my brother.
Well, this, okay, so this brings, you're bringing a whole bunch of questions out for me today, Hanshi. This brings my next one up, and I have thought about this over and over since we had our little talk. Reincarnation, right? Now, I've had some interesting discussions with children who can remember things that I'm like, what? From the 1940s and stuff, and it makes you kind of go, oh, right? And in our discussion, you said to me that in another life you were my son and things, right? Which I think is fantastic because you and I get along like two peas in a pod, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about this because I think the idea of death would be let's okay, we're tickling the idea of reincarnation because like that this is new for me, right? If that is the case, how wonderful it is, but how frustrating it is because I can't remember how many times I've been here and what I've done. And I feel like that is completely pointless to the whole idea of learning something to remember. Is it not?
Oh, it's a question that everybody asks. You know, it's a very simple answer. Okay, let us say that you were a very wealthy person living in England somewhere, and you had a lot of money, and you suddenly died, and you were born in the middle of India somewhere, and you remember your past life that you were a very wealthy person in England, and you decide to go there, and you remember your past life, and you decide to go there and say to that family that you left behind, I am so and so, and I've come to claim my money. Would they believe you?
No, no, of course not.
Of course not. Let us say that somebody was a murderer in the past life, and in this life they were born in a good family. Would they like to remember that they were murderers? No. It is a defense mechanism that God created in your consciousness to prevent you from having difficulties and challenges more than you can cope in this lifetime.
Okay, that's a good point. My rebuttal on that would be then there are some people, I think, I'm not going to say I know, but I thought you said like you can remember some of yours.
Yes,
So then if it's a defense mechanism to protect you, per se, then how come you remember?
because there are some things I have to remember. Okay, I was in one stage of my life, I was a Chinese leader, and they didn't like some of my policies and they killed me. They put me to death. I saw the entire thing happen in front of me. They put me to death. You know, when I was a young kid, I disliked Chinese people because I remembered the previous life. But the moment I remembered the previous life, all that dislike and hatred had disappeared.
Okay. If one wanted to begin to remember parts of it, just not for the sake of being able to remember every single life, because I mean, I'm sure at one point, I'm sorry, my puppy's just here in my arms. I would say at one point you just don't want to know everything, right? There's just so many lives to live. But for the idea of death, for the idea of having this comfort of not worrying so much, even if it's unknown, all these things that we talked about of just the belief stage, right? Of being able to remember one or two lives. So you're gonna be like, that's cool. And when I'm dead, it's all right. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, that can be done easy.
How?
Then I won't be selling my
No, I'll be
SMA.
selling my book. Okay, so Hanshi's next book is How to Remember Your Previous Lives for 44.
It's not hard to do. It's not hard to do. All it takes is a regression. All it does is a regression. You got people that can regress you to your previous lives. There's so many of them.
I really think you should write a book on that. I for one
Yeah.
would buy it.
Okay. No, regression. Regression is the only way. When you regress and you go to a previous life, I mean, you may not like what you about to experience, but it's all there. Your consciousness has all the answers, everything about you. Past life, present life, and bits of a future life.
And is that, I would assume that your body would have to be in a relaxed state in order to take in any universal information. Uh, is there a particular, and I know we're kind of jumping in because we all know that you are a meditation master. So are there particular meditations that could be done, maybe AKA a master class, that you could show us in the future, perhaps?
I can teach meditation, but the difficulty is I don't want to teach regression techniques. The simple reason is you need somebody present to guide you through it.
Right.
Otherwise, you may be in some kind of mental trauma that you can't come out of. So you have to be careful. If there is somebody leading you into the regression, they can pull you out of it very quickly.
Okay.
It's a safety.
How do you, just jumping in back, because I'm sorry I digressed a little bit, but you're very fascinating when you talk about everything actually that happens with me sometimes. With your book, I really, really want to know when it's going to come out. And I know that you have to be, it has to be the right time and the right place. But is it possible for us to pre-order this? To at least get ready?
I mean, about 30 people pre-ordered it, but it's going to be on my website. They can pre-order. It's www.goshinginternational.com.
Okay. Is it going to be on Amazon as well, or just on your website for this?
Yes, Amazon. It's going to be on 3 platforms. It's going to be Amazon and some personally. I'm going to create books of my own for selling, and it's also going to be other publishers. Whoever wants to be part of it, they can do it. It'll be in audio as well as ebook, so they can probably buy the ebook for $1 or $2. And of course, it depends on the printing costs, depends on the cost of the printing. I'm not going to put much money on it, so it's more to help people rather than think you're making a lot of money out of it.
Okay, so if anyone is to pick up this book, then what do you want the end goal for them to be after reading this?
That's a nice question. What is the goal? So I'm going to answer it with a question for you. What is the goal of every human life?
Love.
Thank you. Love.
Right.
So you have come from love, you journey through love, and you end with love. It's as simple as that. God is love, right?
Yeah.
So you come out of God, you go through this life of education, of love, and you end with love, which is God. And you merge into the same ocean. It's like this. The water evaporates from the ocean, forms clouds over the land, comes down as rain, into the river, back into the ocean. It's the same kind of analogy, right?
Isn't that the law of transmutation?
The what?
Law of transmutation, like because you're talking about it can change in and throughout a form, like everything is constantly changing.
Yes.
We just have to interact with it differently. So water,
Yes.
for example, is steam, and then ice and water and so on. Okay. Well, this was the most fascinating interview I think I've ever had so far. Granted, I'm really new at this, but this was amazing. And I really, really, really thank you for your time. And I, for one, will be pre-ordering that book. I'm so excited, but I really want you to put it out tomorrow. So thank you.
Well, it still has to go through the editing process.
Yeah.
I'm just writing as I'm speaking with God, right? I'm just writing as I'm speaking with God. So he gives me the knowledge and I put it there, and the editor will have to, because remember, I am typing as it's coming through. So my finger may hit the wrong key and put the wrong word. So that happens, right?
Yeah.
Whatever God sends is perfect, but whatever I type may be a little
Not.
imperfect.
That's okay. The fact that you took the time to make this book to help all of us is wonderful. And I really appreciate it. And I'm sure that everyone who gets in touch with that book and has it in their hands or listens to it will say the same thing. So thank you very much for being with me today. I'm so excited. And I am going to grab you again to have more talks about all these things, because you just have just a ton of knowledge that I just want to soak in and have for myself, if you don't mind.
I'm just going to correct you there, Diana. I don't have a ton of knowledge. Where is this coming from?
God.
I'm tapping into the source, right, for the information, but it's not coming from the little me called the ego. It's coming from the divine consciousness called the I am, right?
Yeah, which technically means I can tap into it myself then.
So if I'm saying it's coming from me, it's the ego talking. If I'm saying it's coming from the I am presence, then it's this divine consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Which is the ocean.
Yeah. And be it as it may, that I can grab from the ocean and learn from the I am. I love hearing it from you. You're a great storyteller. And I tell you to this day, like, you really need to have an account to be able to tell all the stories that you know, because they are just absolutely funny and fascinating.
Look, I'm in charge. Ain't trying to flex, I'm just here to set the bar. Don't take a rest, you look pressed, how bizarre. Thought you was pulling strings, but that ain't who you are. I'm in charge.